I hear metal hitting metal. I hear like ching, ching, ching. And I turned to my uncle. I'm like, what is that? And he's like, he's practicing his throwing stars. And he just got into Alice Cooper got way into throwing stars.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another ridiculous and unnecessary intro. Check the website, we got dates. RaelynNelsonBand.com.
Then Donohue. Okay, so what's the first music you remember loving as a kid?
Man, the first one I remember loving. I remember my sister was a big Avril Lavigne fan, and she was older than me. And I have the earliest like distinct music memory I have is stealing her Avril Lavigne CD and listening to it like outside on our porch so she wouldn't catch in like a Walkman.
Oh yeah.
And so I guess that would be the first experience because I was willing to like risk my own bodily safety to listen to. You know what I mean?
How old were you?
Oh, I was young. I was probably like 6 or 7.
And this was Complicated album, probably?
Yeah, this was Complicated album. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the high school era when she came out with that, and like Skater Boy was great.
Yeah, it's funny. I even at that age, I was like, no, I like the ballad. You know what I mean? I was a ballad head back then.
I hate ballads.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. Do you like to cry when you hear songs?
I know I'm not a big crier, but I like cry inducing songs. It's
right.
just not, I'm not a big, I appreciate them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when you turn music on now, are you turning sad songs on? Ballads?
No, I actually have like, I know literally every single person in the world thinks that they have the most diverse taste in music. No one, I want to meet the one person who's like, no, I only like pop from the 90s.
I can tell you that one person, it was the first person we had on our podcast, Doug Stanhope. He basically goes,
really?
He just goes, I tell everybody I hate music. That's basically my answer. So he claims to have which he's got a playlist, but
Yeah.
He doesn't claim to be cool with music, but most people do, me included.
Yeah. No, I think I sort of kind of do in like whatever way I do, but yeah, I have a pretty big emotional range with the music I listen to, I think.
All right, so where did you go from Avril Lavigne?
Yeah.
Like what was the next
phase? Oh, headlong into a very like too young to appreciate the music metal phase.
Right.
I was like 10, 11, 12. I loved Lamb of God. I loved Sepultura.
Yeah.
I loved I mean like System of a Down, which is obviously like maybe a little bit different than like metal, but yeah, they're just headlong into like a big Slayer phase. And that really hurt my social abilities as a kid.
Yeah. I was a young metal fan. Did you have a crew of dudes? A small crew generally, or was it, were you running solo?
Not even, no. The answer is no. No, I remember there were these dances. Maybe you two had something similar to this, but they were called wharf dances at my like. They weren't put on by like the schools in my town. They were put on by like probably some like cult like Christian group or something. Like right. They were all trying to like convert us and get us all to arrange our marriages, but we would go to the wharf dances. I remember before they started playing like dance music, they would play like heavy, like they would play metal. So these older kids that were there would like headbang to it. And I showed up. I didn't really know anyone there. I just showed up to show up. And I have this very distinct memory of these like long haired kids, like real metal fans at that age, who were probably like, now I look at 15 or whatever. Right. But they were circle headbanging. I was in my little polo and I had like a crew cut and like, but so I went in, I was like, oh, I like metal. I'll like hang out with these kids. And I went in and I didn't even say a word. I just started like headbanging with them. And one of them, but I don't know, this must have been some sort of like a tribal thing with the metal fans, but he puts his hair over his eyes and he shakes his head and he wags his finger. So like this, all this, like, it was almost like he was wagging his hair at me. And like basically to say like, no, you can't be here. But that was probably when I started moving away from it. You know what I mean? I feel like metal moved away from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when you can't get in the pit at the Christian dance, maybe it's time to step away.
It's time to step away. Yeah, that's the entry level pit. You know what I mean? You can't start there. If you can't start with training wheels, you got to move on.
Was your mom and dad listening? Do you have a mom and dad around?
Yeah. Dad passed away a little while ago. Mom very standard actually, like very much Led Zeppelin, like Fleetwood Mac. My dad actually was a big like gospel fan. So I remember in the car he would always he loved Kirk Franklin and like he had a bunch of, I know, it really weird. The very white guy and just loved Kirk Franklin.
He was a huge deal to the Christian. I grew up Christian and so it was huge when Kirk Franklin came out and he came out with Stomp. And everyone, I mean, it was over and over and over and over and over again. These Christian get-togethers that people were listening to Kirk Franklin.
Nice.
It was so funny about Kirk Franklin, especially those like earlier albums that I remember. He started like one of the things with like he's on trial. Like it was a skit he did in the beginning. He's on trial because it's like I think like because it was like too modern for gospel music, and like that was the big like disagreement in the gospel community. But it was just so funny as a kid listening to this, and he's like doing this big kind of diatribe about how he's like standing trial in front of the gospel community for being like a rebel or whatever. And I was watching him as a kid, probably after listening to metal, I'm like, you're in a pastel suit. What do you mean? Dude, you're fine. Like everything's good.
Were you guys too young for Carmen? Do you remember that?
Oh, I remember Carmen.
Yeah.
You might be too young. I don't know. He used to do those big long
form
movies.
video stuff.
It was great before
Yeah.
I go into his songs. Yeah. And he had that whole soap opera song. I made you guys listen to it.
Yeah,
Have you heard the soap opera song?
No. Wait, what's that?
Well, soap operas were, I guess people still watch them, like
They
daytime
are
soap
still on. I
operas.
flipped through channels the other day and I was like, holy shit, they were still soap
They're
operas
still
on.
on?
Yeah.
So, but this was in the 80s and 90s when they were huge. And he did this whole soap opera song where he was guiding people to Jesus through the
titles of the shows.
Yeah, the names of the shows. It was
actually pretty impressive.
It's so good, actually. Yeah, I loved it when I was a kid. It was great.
Through the power of soap.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Channeling the power of soap. No, yeah. So I like, obviously I didn't get like too into like gospel music, but it did kind of move my musical taste, I feel. And then, yeah, it was always like when you two were younger, did you ever fall into like social groups based on the music you listened to?
Oh, absolutely. My entire early teens, you had to try, you wear the wrong concert shirt or whatever, and people are like, fuck this guy, it was, yeah.
What were those bands that you all kind of gathered around?
Well, see, I'm old. So for me, it was, there was like Rush and Van Halen and AC/DC was the biggie. Then into Motorhead and like the early punk rock stuff. But the biggies were, AC/DC when I was in like 8th grade, AC/DC, Zeppelin, but they were broken up by then. But those mammoth rock bands.
Yeah. It's funny. I recently saw an old AC/DC video and it made me buy a sleeveless denim vest.
Nice.
I was like, that rocked. And then I bought one at a thrift store and I went to a bar with it on. And within 2 minutes, I was like, not the best choice, but hey, we tried some,
Well, if you're going to do that, you got to double down with the extremely tight jeans.
You got to get the tight jeans. Did he wear one of those like newsy hats that they wear in Boston?
The second singer did. The first one that was wearing the vest, basically. Yeah,
right.
He's dead. But yeah, the other guy has the hat.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. But yeah, those were like the early, because I never I never felt like connected. It was always through kind of like stand up when I started doing stand up that I would kind of connect with like the people around me. But it was never with music. So I was always just listening to like music by myself, which is kind of good because I never had someone in my ear being like, oh, you shouldn't listen to this, or like this is like bad or boring or whatever. It's kind of nice to just have that. Like I've always been so removed from music. Like I have no musical talent, which I think is actually good because a lot of comics, I think in the back of their head are like, I could write a song, you know?
Yeah.
But I've never been like that.
You've never written.
We've talked to a few of them. I won't name any names, but yeah.
Have you?
When I was a kid, and it was like, obviously, I listened back to one of the recordings I made with a friend of mine, and I was like, thank God we didn't, because the internet is just there.
Oh,
for
man.
like, for me, when I was a kid, like the internet was just there, and it's like I so easily could have just put like, oh, I'll put this out, and listening back to it, I'm like, thank God I wasn't savvy enough to do that.
How young were you when you wrote it?
Oh, I must have been 13, 14.
Yeah, that's right. The time that if you had it out there for public consumption now.
Oh God, could you imagine?
Yeah, but see, I have twin boys. They're 15. And literally just before we walked in here, I texted them and said, will you please send me a voice memo of you beatboxing for 30 seconds? And it took me like, they're like, we don't want to, I don't want to do it. It's cringy. And
Right.
But come on, it's just for me and JB. We're not playing it for anyone. It's just for me, please. So it took me some coaching. So I still think,
Right.
I don't think anybody
And
would
here's that beatboxing now. Hit it.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I would never do that to them.
Of course.
But maybe if they, I told them I wouldn't put it out anymore, and they'll say no about it. Otherwise, I would do it.
They're beatboxers?
Yeah, and then they'll use like the cabinets and the can opener, and I've gotten some cool videos of them. Yeah, they're basically into percussion. They like this band called AJR. Do you know this band?
Oh, no.
So it's a group of brothers, and they write catchy melodies.
It's
and
like Hanson.
It's like the new Hanson. Kinda. I feel like Hanson was a little more rocky, right?
Yeah, these guys are more Beatlesque. Actually, I've listened to some of their kids were playing me, and I was like,
Boys.
they give big harmonies. I'm like, for a boy band, they're actually pretty good.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
They have catchy melodies. They play all their instruments, and I like them. I wake up singing the songs in my head because my boys are listening to them all day long. So that's, but they definitely have, like a random percussion instrument that'll come in randomly, just kind of the AJR thing. So percussion is where they like to, that's their jam.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, that seems like to be the simple one. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of just, there's like an easy get in point where you can just like hit stuff against stuff.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I started playing drums, and that's what you start doing, just beating on shit.
Yeah. I love that. So when were you two always like big comedy fans, or did that develop when you started going on the road and, like you said, listening to albums? I had the Steve Martin record when I was a kid. Didn't get half of it, SNL, all that stuff. But right around, I always liked comics, but like right around Bill Hicks and those guys, when they came through, is when I really jumped. I was in my mid-20s or whatever. Really dove in with that. Saw Bill Hicks here a couple of times come through before he was huge. But and then all that kind of stuff.
The comedy that I liked, or comedians I liked, they were actors, and I didn't know they did stand-up comedy. They were
really like who?
Like
all of them
Steve
on
Martin.
sitcoms.
Like like just the people on
like
sitcoms.
Bob Saget.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't understand that they did stand-up comedy. So I guess in my late teens, I started listening to the raw comedy on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
Because my grandpa got me a Jetta, and it had Sirius already in it. It's the only brand new car I've ever had. And so I was listening to the stand-up comedy when I would just drive. I stopped listening to music and just listened to that. And that's when I really got into comedy. But yeah, I mean, the first one I remember was listening to Kathleen Madigan on that Raw XM.
Yeah.
Series.
That's a great entrance point. I love Kathleen Madigan.
What was the first comedian you remember?
The first one, I've always I've been a comedy. There's a lot of stand-ups who are like, oh, I wasn't really into comedy. And I think that's why like a lot of people who weren't into comedy and then get into stand-up are very like original in a way. I was a comedy freak. Like my first concert was Weird Al Yankovic. That was my first the first in-person concert I went to was Weird Al. So it's like, but the first stand-up I saw was Ron White, because I was a big blue collar comedy fan, and he was my favorite one. And he came through and played the Zeiterion Theater in New Bedford, which is crazy thinking back to it, because I was like, that's not a huge theater for you to play. I don't know why he was there. But yeah, that was like my intro, I think. And I was lucky enough to have a weird friend who was really into like the Patton Oswalt's, Maria Bamfort's during the really early years of their stand-up kind of picking up. So that's where I kind of, it shifted for me. But yeah, originally it was like Ron White was like a big, and I'll still watch his stuff and be like, this is amazing. It's the kind of comedy that only comes from somebody who is just put in hour after hour after hour. It's just like you can hear the time in it.
Yeah. And the blue collar comedy tour, I remember that happening when I was a kid. And everybody,
where did you grow up? Just out of curiosity?
Where were you?
I was in Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what's always cracked me up about the blue collar tour.
It's so
It just
southern.
translates.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
they're jokes,
Yeah.
you know. Even if you don't understand what they're saying, like a nickname or something, you get it.
Right. And there's that whole thing of like, I think they're in the North, there was definitely this thing of like, oh, look at these, like, oh, this is what people are like in the South. Like, not understanding, obviously, it's a caricature and they're doing character. I mean, when you're a kid, you're like, oh, it's crazy that people from the South are like this. And then I remember I went to Georgia to visit my aunt when I was younger. And I was like, oh, why does no one have a cutoff flannel on right now? This is weird. But yeah, those were like the early, those are really the early. And it's like when you become a douchey teenager and you become like a snob, like, oh, actually that stuff really sucked and I hate those comics now. But it took me a while to go back and like listen to old Jeff Foxworthy and old Ron White and stuff. And it's like, no, they're really good.
Yeah.
Like,
they're
like
writing. They're writing.
yeah.
It's just crazy.
And just like the technique, like their ability to like tell a story, and like Ron, the thing I always took from him was his ability to just take pregnant pauses and give enough time for the audience to like catch up. It is so like masterful.
Yeah.
So you're talking about being a comedy freak. Is that something when you were a kid, you're like, you know what? I think I want to, if you know, no. I never thought, that started when I was in college. Like when I was in college is when I started even thinking about doing stand up. But yeah, it sort of came into play later on. But I was just like, I was just, like everybody, I was incredibly depressed and I had nothing to do. And I was like, oh, I'll start doing open mics. Right. So when you said you had all these comedians that have you watched over the years and whatever, was there any? We've talked to a lot of people that basically like, I was, my first year, I was basically just doing my favorite comedian. Did you have that, or were you doing like a ton of your favorite comedians at the same time?
It was kind of that. Yeah, I was kind of doing a ton, and it was kind of like, honestly, when I first started comedy, it was around when, I don't know when this album was released, but I remember distinctly listening to a lot of Neil Brennan, and like, so that was somebody whose like voice and cadence I sort of like very deeply understood and like, so it was probably that, which is unfortunate because I wish it was like Cat Williams. Like I wish I was learning how to do act out early on and learning how to like, use the stool for all it's worth. But unfortunately, no, it was all just bits early on. Now I have to learn that stuff later in life.
Yeah, just learning another version of yourself, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you get started? I mean, I used to open mics, like where you were in college, did they have them around? Like,
yeah, so I went to school in UMass Amherst and at UMass Amherst. And first mic I went to was at in Northampton, Massachusetts, which is like right in the middle of all of these kind of like more geared towards liberal arts colleges and stuff like that. So it was I didn't know this when I started. I just went to the mic, but looking back on it, it was a very open kind of creative space. Like I felt like the people who were Bishop's Lounge comedy open mic night was the place. and it was two nights a week, which is crazy for an open mic, and they were both good. So I would take the bus down, and just I would do both nights every single right when I started. I really like started, and I was just like basically started by doing stand up every single night, and I'm really grateful because looking back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, those people who were doing stand up at that mic were weird in like the good way. Like they didn't really give a shit about getting work on the road. Like they weren't trying to go for topics that would play to a mass audience. And that was honestly really helpful when I was younger, because I definitely was, and I was very annoying to all of them. And I think that did sort of like level me out a little bit.
Right. So you start doing that. Is the thought process, I want to start here and then move to New York or LA? Were you thinking maybe I'll go to LA and see if I can't get on a TV show? Any of that kind of stuff?
Oh God. I moved to LA because my cousin had a apartment that I could stay at for 3 months and a job at a factory that I could take. And that's why and when she told me that it was in Boston, I was in Boston and it was cold and I was living on my friend's couch, and I was like, LA sounds awesome, actually.
So when you're headed out there, did you just go, all right, I'm going to start doing comedy in Los Angeles?
Yeah, well, it's funny because it was in Reseda, but I was like, oh, that's Los Angeles. It's all Los Angeles at the end of the day.
Big place.
Yeah, so I started my first year doing stand-up in the Valley. For the most part, which is actually pretty good because I got to kind of like dip my toes in and, you know, make a complete asshole out of myself for the first year without like really going to the big mics where people who I actually like, you know, where a lot of the like more established comics would go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you're at the store a lot now? The comedy store?
No, I hang out there a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you started,
It's intimidating. Yeah.
did you have a crew of comics when you started out? Like, did you meet like a little scene there?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and we still hang out for the most part. Like the group of comics that I like met right away is pretty much the crew. And it's like it's a lot of people who are just now kind of like I don't know if you guys know like Will Sennett or Robert Schultz or Dana Donnelly. Like they were all kind of in that group starting off.
Yeah, that's it. Most of the people we talk to, it seems like they have a class or something that they come up with, and you know, some of them make it, some of them don't. But
yeah, is it like that? Would you say with like music? Because did you two start in like a musical scene? Like, was it in like what city did you guys start in?
Nashville.
Yeah, my family's done music, so my story's a little different.
Yeah, but there was in the mid to late 80s in Nashville, there was this sort of underground punk rock alternative music scene, and it was great. It was a very small town, and there were about 3 clubs there. There was a small one you played, you got a big enough to sell that out, you move across the street, the end, and you move across the street to the exit end, and then the Cannery had some rooms. But you know, the Chili Peppers and these guys would come through town that weren't blown up yet, but they were big on. We had college radio back then, which almost doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It was just, if you lived in a college town and you happen to have cool students with good record collections, what they did here at Vanderbilt, you'd hear all the new punk, you'd hear some terrible stuff because they didn't, no playlist. You could play whatever you wanted to play.
Right.
But there was always like, there was a guy that had a great funk show every Sunday night. So anyway, but there was definitely a scene. And then it took a while, but then bands started getting signed out of it. And then the whole corporate thing kind of like people came here to make it, you know? Because if you were a rock band, you didn't want to say you were from Nashville way back in the day.
Oh, really? Why?
It's just a stigma, you know. It's like
interesting. Oh, like you're in Nashville. It's like that with being an LA comic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It does when you go out when I'm out of town. I'll see the vibe of the room, and then when they say, "What do you want to say?" When I bring you up, I'll either be like, "In from LA," or I'll be like, "This guy's from Cape Cod, Massachusetts." You know what I mean? You gotta make your pick.
Yeah, you probably have a good sight of that being from Massachusetts, not being an LA comic, but you kind of got an insight into it, you know?
Yeah, you know, and there's like a lot of great comics in LA, but it's like I think with any scene that's big, I'm sure it's the same with Nashville. It's like you're gonna be able to pick your people to like seek out and be like, no, they suck, so the scene sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
sure.
But you know what I miss from like the small scene, and maybe you had this with your small scene with music, but it's like the small scene drama. I really do miss that. Oh, the little kings and queens that that just throw their weight around in those little. It's so good.
Yeah, it's funny. You get to that. That's kind of that old punk rock thing. You get to rebel, no rules or whatever. Then before you know it, there's a dress code. And if you're not wearing it, you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
where's your mohawk, buddy? You know?
Right. Yeah, when I started in the like the open, so no one's making money. Like we are
Yeah.
literally like going and buying drinks to do stand up. That those 2 nights, the two people who hosted it, who I love both of them, they were both really nice, but they had dated each other, and they both like broke up and had beef. So there was a big deal, like huge deal, put on. Do you come to the Sunday mic or the Wednesday mic? Like, are you and people who went to both, you were walking a really fine line, and you didn't want them to find out that you were going to the other one. It was like a big deal. People were like, "Oh my god, did you see that? Like, Dan went to the Sunday and then the Wednesday." It's like, where does his allegiance lie?
Wow. I haven't even thought about that.
Well, I believe it. I believe
But
it.
hell, even in big scenes, it can get
Drama
petty.
will find itself anywhere. There's a group
Yeah,
of people, and especially if
yeah.
there's girls involved, for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
I don't
now
know. I've been around enough guys to know it is not gender specific. We get as catty as too.
have you been able to get out on the road and do road dates?
Yeah, yeah. That started recently for me. So like, I was basically being taken on the road by two comics, Jessa Reed and John Rudnitsky, who are both. Jessa actually is in Nashville, and yeah, John was on SNL, and he's an actor, and he does a lot of stand up too. But just recently, I started doing my own date, so I'm actually at this really exciting point right now where I'm just like dipping my toe into booking my own like headlining gigs, and it's very fun. It's a fun I mean, it's a terrifying process, but it's very fun.
It's a blast. That's a fun, invigorating position to be in. It's like your
Yeah.
2 point, it's scary. And it's every time one of them works, you're like, yes, yes. On to
Well,
the
it's
next.
what I'm dealing with right now is it sucks. I mean, it's a great thing, but it sucks how much I realize now I need it for my creative process. Like, because before I did this, I was getting locked into doing feature time, which is like 20 to 30 minutes. And so I was just like 20, 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. And I was doing that for so long that now that I'm doing longer time, it forces my brain to change stuff and elongate it and like find pauses and find different stuff. And I was like, man, I wish this wasn't like situationally dependent, but now I feel like I actually do need it to like come up with new stuff, is to just like have that longer chunk of time.
Yeah, it's kind of like, sort of like when you start a new band, you're never ready when you book your first gig. You just go ahead and you're close and you just book it. And then you're like,
You figure it out.
it's coming. So you figure it out before, hopefully you figure it out before.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. Yeah. Yeah. I had my first three, the first two went great. They were outside of LA, which I had no idea about this, but I didn't know how much easier it is to book stuff outside of LA than in LA, or to sell tickets outside of LA than in LA. And
Same with
so
music.
my first, yeah, I think with every performing art, because there's just so much to do and stuff. So my first two, I'm like all excited. I'm like, one was sold out, one was like just about sold out, and the venue in LA was even smaller than the two that I did before. So I was like, this is going to be easy. 6 people, just the sixest people you've ever seen. You know what I mean? And like just going out there, and I mean, it was still fun. They were all great, but it was very, very humbling early on, where I was like, okay, now we have the actual like challenge.
Yeah, that is the experience. I know from experience. We played shows for 1, 2
Yeah.
people, but those are the bombs are the ones you end up remembering forever.
Yeah.
All the great ones kind of run together. Maybe one particular one stands out, but there's only one best show you played, but there's a lot of bad ones, and all the great stories come from those.
You have any that really stick out?
Well, I've done stand up in front of 6 people before. And
Oh,
that was
really? Oh, where's that?
It was here in Nashville, and it was like a couple of months ago at Cafe Coco, and it was during the day.
Yeah.
And I've only done stand up like a handful of times. I'm not, I've just been having fun with it, and just to be able to talk about it here. And
Yeah.
JB won't do it, so I get to, say I'm a comedian and he's not. But we tell jokes in between our songs and stuff, and I feel
but going back to bombing to the 6
I was
people.
trying to segue.
No, let's stick to the bombing in front of 6
please
people.
tell me. No, I need to hear this.
Here's my theory.
Like, and just even talking about it, my arms start sweating, and it was just like every time I think about it, I cringe. It's just so awful. Nobody, like one lady actually, her lip came out like a puppy dog, like
oh yeah.
Oh my God, it was just horrifying, and I just start rambling about things that I had no intention of talking about, and then I was just like, okay.
But my theory on that is it's probably hard to like, it would be way easier for a band to play in front of 6 people.
Oh,
but if you're sitting there trying to tell a joke in front of 6 people, some people laugh out loud, some people chuckle, but they really enjoy it. But nobody wants to just burst out laughing because there's only 6 of you in there.
Here's the problem. 6 people laughing sounds like this.
That's what I'm saying. They might be a little self-conscious about their laughing anyway, because there's only fucking 6 of them there.
The great thing about those is like like what you said with the one with the puppy dog lip, when you're doing poorly, I think people have this like Spider-Man level hypersensitivity to the specific things people are doing in the audience, because when you're doing super well, now that I'm saying this, I'm just realizing this, when you're doing super well, you never, unless it's like something that you're riffing on or that you're keying on to do a joke about, it's like you're never looking at people and being like, oh, what does that guy think? Like, what is this person feeling? You're seeing it as like a collective, but when you're doing bad, you see the people as like individuals that all hate you.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Yeah. I mean, oh yeah, I've done so many, especially like early on in like the college town I was at, because you just never knew what you were walking in on, whether it was like a bunch of, because Western Mass is like kind of, there's a lot of like farming stuff there, but there's also all the college towns, so you never knew if you're walking in on like a more farmer centric show or a more college centric show, and you would do bad at both. And like I remember this one time I was doing this like bar show, which I had no idea were more challenging than a show in like whatever theater or place that's for comedy. And so it's just loud and people are just talking. The people who are listening don't really want to be there. And I just remember like finishing a joke and having a woman go, no, but not no like a boo, no like a come on. No.
Do you remember the joke?
No, I have no idea. It's all a blur.
Yeah, I think the closest thing we get being a band is the person playing an acoustic guitar in the corner of a bar.
Yeah.
But you're still.
But see, like when you were talking about the times we played for 6 people, I feel like that's when we've come up with our best jokes. When we had to just talk to 6 people.
Well, yeah,
Me and you,
constant crowd work because
we could just play a song after we were, doing crowd work with them.
Yeah, but it's one of those things I always see, like, I think the big difference, because everybody always talks about like music and comedy. I think that the big difference is with comedy, people look at it and they go, oh, it's so simple because you just need a microphone and a stand. But it's like, that's not true. And everyone knows that's not true. Because I think in a way, the audience is a instrument essentially to the show. Like the audience, it needs it, like there's like a playing aspect that you have to do as a comic with the audience that as a musician, you don't necessarily need to do. Like you can just, like you said, you can just play acoustic guitar in the back of a bar. And if no one's listening to you, you can still play it and sing your heart out. And it doesn't necessarily feel that bad because it's a closed loop. Like music can be this closed loop where you're just playing it by yourself and whoever comes in, and whoever doesn't. But like with comedy, you need the audience to be there because the audience is like essentially an instrument or like a fixture of the performance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, because I'm just thinking about that I don't know if you saw the very last thing Norm Macdonald did. He basically just did an hour into his laptop before he passed away.
Yes.
So there was no crowd. So it did. It was still funny as hell, but it took me about 5 or so minutes to get into the groove and just mentally put the laughs in where they're supposed to go because you're so conditioned to call, response, call, response.
Right. Right. And Norm's so weird he would just do that. Like that
Well,
that
that's
makes
true.
a lot of sense. Yeah. But like I think everybody when they start doing it, they'll do a show where they're like, you're young and you're full of this ambition and you're like, yeah, why don't we just put like 5 chairs in the living room and we'll do a show that, and then you try that and it goes so poorly. You're like, oh, and then you start learning like, no, having the right setup for the audience and the right acoustics and the right all that stuff really does matter in a big way for a show to like really. And there's always those exceptional circumstances where like it can work out, but for the most part you do really need to take care and have like the audience be very like in the right place and have the right amount of chairs and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then there's those weird dudes like Norm, or I've heard Nick DiPaolo stories that silence in a crowd, they almost just lean into it. It doesn't bother them like it bothers other people, I heard somebody talking the other day about Nick DiPaolo back in the day, just going in. He's like, he'd just be destroying, just crushing. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he'd just pick somebody out and just bring the entire room down to a cricket. He's like, it'd stay that way for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden, bang, he'd get him right back. But something about those guys that like to dip their toe into those weird waters.
Yeah, I think that is a stage strategy. I think that eventually, like, you do start playing around with it a little bit more, like as you get like older, and sometimes for good effect, sometimes for bad effect. But like, yeah, I've seen that too, definitely with like people sort of a guy who I really love watching, Jamar Neighbors. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but very similar, where it just like we'll do like the funniest things, and then we'll do stuff that's almost like intentionally instigative to the audience, which is always so hilarious to me watching like in the back. And you can tell like there's like it's intentional, and it is to sort of create like an emotion with the audience. But I could see being a person just watching that and being like, whoa. But that's why I like it and I'm so drawn to it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that type of humor for sure.
Yeah.
Nope.
Awkward and
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, or dark. And I wonder if you might, maybe you and your friends know more about this, but I would like in Nashville, if you're playing music, it's not a great place to make money unless you're playing covers down on Broadway or whatever. Big national acts will come through and draw. But as far as going out, I mean, there's a scene, but you're not ever going to make any money doing it here. You come here to kind of get good.
Right.
Is it the same way in Los Angeles? I was just thinking about that with comics. Like you can go, even if you're doing stuff at the Comedy Store, that's great, but you're probably making money if you are
Like
performing
20
there.
bucks.
But I'm saying the
set.
actual gig sucks. And it's just one material. We have to get out of town to make any money.
Yeah, spots like spots in LA don't pay all that much. Like the store and the Laugh Factory and stuff, that's all just spots where you're just like, most of the comics that take those are just literally trying to build time, I'm sure there's people who figured out a way to make money doing stand-up like in the city of Los Angeles. Like if you run your own show or whatever, you can do it. But other than those circumstances, it's like, yeah, absolutely. You do kind of have to get out to get paid. And it's like, even then, you kind of have to like headline or be with a good enough, nice enough headliner who will like pay you on top of the money that you're making, which a lot of them are usually cogent enough to do. But even if you're like featuring, I mean, I've done shows on the road where the standard feature price is $50 a set. And that's at like a club, like a real established club. And that was the price they were paying people probably in like 2000. You know what I mean? Like that price ticket price has gone up. The price of, the chicken that you're eating has gone up, but the feature price that stays leveled out.
That's just like opening bands.
Yeah.
You got to be broke for a long time before you get
pay to play, even not like paying the venue to play, but you have to pay for gas and pay to sleep somewhere.
Yeah. The first few years, you just basically lose money. And if you're like, oh my God, they're going to pay us $200, we're actually going to break even. This is great.
Totally. I mean, I still like often will lose money or break even like that. This whole year I've been like, I've been lucky enough to at least break even on most of my stuff, but a lot of the stuff I'm breaking even. But yeah, you just need to do that to build time. I mean, especially as a comic, like I said, like getting in front of an audience is so almost like it's the most like important thing, and it's hard to find audiences. Like it's hard to get up in front of a good audience. I think people who book shows know that, and they understand that. Like, well, you have to do this to build the time to eventually make, you know, the kind of money that you know is possible. So we're not going to give you a lot of money because we know you need this. Like, so it's one of those things where it's just part of it. It's unfortunate, but you know, I mean, I haven't found a way out of it. So I'll be performing in Huntington Beach this weekend if you want to see me break even.
Okay, so when's the first time you remember hearing about Willie Nelson, my grandpa? Do you know who he is?
Can I tell? I have a story about this.
Okay, good.
After Weird Al, the first concert I saw as a kid was Willie Nelson.
Oh.
He played a benefit at the Zeiterion Theater. It was when Billy Bob Thornton's band, the Boxmasters, were open. They opened for him, and then yeah. And then it was like this. I wish I remembered his name, but it was this older, like very good older country singer. And then Willie, and yeah, we saw like the hits. Yeah, my aunt
Ray
Pam.
Price? Was it Ray Price? Maybe.
Yes, it was Ray Price. Yes. Yeah, Ray Price. And then so I was really, I mean, I was so lucky as a kid that was like one of the early concerts. But my aunt Pam, who was like this big hippie, is who originally got me into Willie Nelson when I was like really young. But yeah, that was like one of my first concerts, was seeing him live.
That's cool. It was my first concert. I was 2 months old when I went to a concert.
All right, you got me beat. Okay, fine.
Everybody should go see a Papa Willie show. It's a great. It's for everyone. It is for kids. It's for old people, young people.
Yeah,
everybody.
I saw the 90th birthday show poster in LA. Yeah, that's cool.
We haven't been asked to play yet.
Hey, the call's coming soon.
It's soon. Maybe you know someone out there in LA. You could just,
make some calls. No, it's so funny because when I went to see Willie Nelson, one of the big things my mom was saying is like, this is good because like you don't know how much longer these people are going to perform. Like you don't know how many. He's probably not going to be performing much. And I'm 28, and he's still performing.
Yeah, he does.
Awesome.
75 minutes.
I don't think he stopped. He hasn't really stopped since he got
since the pandemic.
Again.
Yeah, the
Not
pandemic.
just in general. Once he started touring, it's like he never stopped.
No, he never
touring.
stopped.
I think those guys they just get into a groove, and it like just becomes their life force. My uncle does like stage lighting, and he works with Alice Cooper. Yeah. And so Alice Cooper was another like early concert, and I remember when I was a little older at this point, right? I was like 15, 16. So I kind of knew about Alice Cooper, and I was like, man, he was around a long time ago. Like he's still performing. I was like, yeah, he's still doing all the props, got the guillotine out there. He's doing everything. I meet him, and we're waiting next door from the like it's his dressing room and then a wall and then our room or whatever. And I hear metal hitting metal. I hear like ching, ding, ding. And I turned to my uncle. I'm like, what is that? And he's like, he's practicing his throwing stars. And he just got into Alice Cooper got way into throwing stars, and he's like brings them on the nationwide tour. They put them through like customs, and he needs and I'm like, that's as young as you can be at that age. It's throwing stars.
Chinese throwing stars.
His daughter's doing stuff too with Bisto Blanco. Our friend Chuck Garrick plays bass for Alice Cooper, and he has his own band called Bisto Blanco, and Alice's daughter, whose name I can't remember right now, she's in that band and sings and plays
Calico.
too. Thank you, Calico.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So that's great. But yeah, that was my earliest hearing about Willie. And it's funny because his music comes up like in weird way. I remember I was on a road trip and Hello Walls came on, which wasn't like it wasn't really on my radar, and it was just like a perfect moment for that song to come on and stuff. stuff. So yeah, there's been a few times with that.
Hello Walls is great. That was one of my favorites when I was a kid. And I didn't really understand why, but I didn't understand the song necessarily of like what it was really about. But
Yeah,
I
you were goth.
yeah.
That's what that was.
Well, thanks for doing this with us, Dan. But we're gonna pretend to get off and then ask you some more fun questions when
Great.
for the patrons. So
Beautiful.
officially,
And we're done.
Dan Donohue is my favorite comedian.
I like that guy. Good up and comer. Looking forward to seeing his stuff.
He was funny.
I like him. He looks like somebody I used to know. Just kidding. Enjoy your groceries.
Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.
Did we cheers yet? Joey, you'll see that.